The Galactic Council's emergency session buzzed with nervous energy as Ambassador Zenth of the Krovar Empire delivered his report. His four arms gestured dramatically, while his translator device converted his chittering language into the common tongue understood by all species present. "The humans have responded to our ultimatum with silence," Zenth announced, his compound eyes scanning the assembled delegates. "3 standard cycles have passed since we demanded their withdrawal from the Kepler sector. They ignore our superior fleet positions and continue their mining operations as if we pose no threat." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The sleek, dolphin-like Aquarians clicked their approval, while the crystalline Vorthak representatives chimed in harmonic agreement. Only the Terran ambassador, Sarah Chun, remained silent in her designated corner, her face an unreadable mask. Admiral KYXX of the Hegemony Defense Force stood, his towering reptilian frame casting shadows across the chamber. The human military presence in that sector consists of outdated vessels and a handful of defense platforms. Our intelligence suggests fewer than 50,000 troops guard their entire operation, against our combined fleet of 2 million warriors and 800 capital ships. They're insects waiting to be crushed. The assembled delegates erupted in approval. Species after species had joined the coalition against humanity, each bringing their own grievances. The humans had been too successful too quickly. In less than 2 centuries since achieving faster-than-light travel, they had claimed dozens of star systems and established thriving colonies. Their aggressive expansion and stubborn independence had finally pushed the established galactic powers too far. The Terran mining operation violates 17 different territorial agreements, continued Admiral KYXX. They extract rare earth metals that rightfully belong to the coalition. Their illegal settlements house millions of colonists who refuse to acknowledge our authority. This ends now. Sarah Chun finally spoke, her voice calm despite the hostile atmosphere. The Kepler sector was unclaimed when we arrived. We followed all established protocols for system colonization. Our settlements are legal under galactic law. Laws that your species helped write to benefit yourselves, spat Commander Vex of the Mantic Collective, his insectoid features twisted with disdain. You exploit loopholes while established civilizations struggle for resources. The Krovar Empire alone has existed for 10,000 years. We will not be pushed aside by upstart mammals who learned to build starships yesterday. The human ambassador's expression never changed. Our colonies will defend themselves if attacked. I urge the Council to reconsider this course of action. Laughter echoed through the chamber. The idea that humans could mount any meaningful resistance against the largest military coalition in galactic history struck most delegates as absurd. Humanity's fleet consisted mainly of converted cargo vessels and mining ships. Their ground forces used projectile weapons and chemical explosives, while coalition armies wielded plasma cannons and antimatter charges. Your warnings ring hollow, human, Admiral KYXX declared. Our species mastered warfare, while yours was discovering fire. We have studied your military capabilities extensively. Your soldiers are poorly trained civilians playing at war. Your technology is primitive. Your tactics are outdated. This will not be a battle. It will be an extermination. The vote to authorize military action passed by an overwhelming margin. Only Earth's representative opposed the decision, her lone dissent noted for the historical record. As delegates filed out of the chamber, many already planned victory celebrations. The human threat would be eliminated within days. Admiral KYXX reviewed the final attack plans aboard his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath. Intelligence reports painted a picture of easy conquest. Human forces in the Kepler sector centered around 3 main colonies: New Geneva on the 4th planet, Armstrong Station in the asteroid belt, and New Shanghai on the system's largest moon. Defensive installations appeared minimal and outdated. Their ground forces used kinetic weapons and chemical explosives, reported intelligence officer THYSS, her scaled fingers dancing across holographic displays. No energy shields, no plasma weaponry. Their armor consists of metal plates and fabric. Most concerning is their apparent lack of military discipline. Many units consist of civilian volunteers with minimal training. The Admiral nodded approvingly. And their fleet capabilities? 47 vessels total, mostly converted civilian ships. Their largest warship displaces only 800,000 tons compared to our dreadnoughts at 12 million tons. They possess no antimatter weapons or quantum torpedoes. Their shields operate on primitive electromagnetic principles. Excellent. We will demonstrate the futility of resistance to human expansion. Order all task forces to their designated positions. When we strike, it will be swift and decisive. Meanwhile, in the depths of the New Geneva colony, General Marcus Hayes reviewed defensive preparations with his senior staff. The graying veteran had served in conflicts across human space, but nothing on this scale. His weathered face showed no emotion as casualty projections filled the tactical displays. Coalition forces outnumber us 40-1, reported Colonel Liu, his aide-de-camp. They possess overwhelming technological advantages in every category. Standard military doctrine suggests immediate evacuation of civilian populations. General Hayes studied the holographic battlespace. Coalition fleets had positioned themselves at jump points throughout the system, cutting off escape routes. Evacuation isn't an option. They're not here to conquer. They're here to exterminate. We fight where we stand. Sir, with respect, how can we possibly hold against those odds? The general's weathered features creased into something resembling a smile. The coalition has made several critical assumptions about human military capabilities. They believe we're poorly trained civilians with primitive equipment. They assume we'll fight according to standard galactic military doctrine. Most importantly, they've never faced human veterans in actual combat. He activated another display showing troop dispositions across the colonies. Every human in the Kepler sector served in the border wars against the Syndicate. Our civilian volunteers are combat veterans with an average of 6 years frontline experience. Our primitive equipment has been battle-tested against human opponents who understand human tactics. Colonel Liu looked confused. I don't understand, sir. How does that help against superior alien technology? Because, General Hayes replied, humans don't fight fair. We fight to win. The coalition is about to learn the difference between military theory and combat reality. The first coalition probes arrived 3 days later. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures as the alien fleet deployed into attack formation. Admiral KYXX commanded the operation personally, confident that victory would come swiftly. Begin the demonstration, he ordered. Target the orbital mining platforms. Show them the futility of resistance. The first salvo vaporized 2 unmanned facilities, their destruction visible from the planet's surface. Coalition propagandists broadcast the attack across human communication networks, demanding immediate surrender. Instead of despair, the response surprised the alien commanders. Human defenders cheered as the platforms exploded. Combat veterans who had faced death countless times showed no fear of alien weaponry. If anything, the display of overwhelming force seemed to energize rather than demoralize the colonists. Psychological warfare ineffective, reported intelligence officer THYSS. Human communications indicate increased resistance rather than submission. Admiral KYXX frowned, but remained confident. Primitive minds often react illogically to superior force. Proceed with ground assault operations. Once their soldiers begin dying, reality will set in. The first invasion forces launched from coalition carriers, aiming for strategic targets around New Geneva's capital city. Thousands of assault craft filled the sky, their formations precise and overwhelming. According to every tactical manual in galactic military history, the defenders should have broken before the first shot was fired. Instead, the humans waited. Coalition forces landed unopposed in designated zones, their commanders puzzled by the lack of defensive fire. Alien soldiers advanced cautiously, expecting ambushes that never came. The human defenders seemed to have abandoned their positions entirely. Resistance minimal, reported Ground Commander Vex as his troops secured the landing zones. Human forces appear to have retreated to prepared positions around the city. We will advance and crush them systematically. The first indication that something was wrong came when the coalition's advance guard entered the industrial district surrounding New Geneva. Human defenders had indeed retreated, but they hadn't abandoned the area. Instead, they had prepared it. The explosions started small. A disabled vehicle here, a collapsed building there. Each blast seemed isolated, almost accidental. Coalition forces continued advancing, their sophisticated sensors detecting no organized resistance. The humans appear to be employing random, desperate tactics. Then, the real ambush began. Human veterans emerged from concealed positions throughout the district, their tactics unlike anything in galactic military databases. They didn't form defensive lines or attempt to hold territory. Instead, they struck hard and vanished, using knowledge of local terrain to maximum advantage. Coalition soldiers found themselves fighting ghosts. Enemy contact lasted seconds before human forces melted away, only to strike again from unexpected directions. The alien superior technology meant little when they couldn't locate targets to shoot. Enemy employs unconventional guerrilla tactics, Commander Vex reported, his usual confidence wavering. They refuse to engage in standard battlefield formations. Our superior firepower cannot achieve target acquisition. Admiral KYXX studied the tactical displays with growing concern. His ground forces possessed overwhelming advantages in equipment and numbers, yet they were taking casualties while inflicting minimal damage in return. The humans fought like nothing in his species' military experience. How many troops have we lost? Preliminary reports indicate 300 casualties in the first engagement zone. Human losses unknown. They retrieve their wounded and dead before we can assess damage. 300 casualties from forces that were supposed to be helpless civilians with primitive weapons. The Admiral's confidence began to crack. On the ground, Sergeant Mike Rodriguez led his squad through the ruins of a factory complex, their movements silent despite the rubble-strewn terrain. 20 years of combat experience had taught him to read battlefields like books, and this one told a clear story. Coalition forces are advancing in standard formation, he whispered into his comm unit. They're expecting us to hold defensive positions like good little soldiers. Time to educate them about human creativity. His squad carried weapons the Coalition intelligence had dismissed as primitive, kinetic rifles, explosive charges, and chemical incendiaries. What the aliens hadn't considered was how effectively such weapons could be employed by soldiers who understood human tactics. Rodriguez's team struck from 3 directions simultaneously, their coordinated assault lasting exactly 90 seconds before they vanished into prepared escape routes. Behind them, alien soldiers lay dead or wounded, their superior armor proving inadequate against weapons designed by humans to kill humans. The pattern repeated across the combat zone. Human veterans used terrain, timing, and pure audacity to overcome technological disadvantages. They booby-trapped alien equipment, poisoned water supplies, and turned the Coalition's own weapons against them through captured ammunition. Most disturbing to Coalition commanders was the humans' apparent immunity to psychological warfare. Alien forces had expected their enemies to break under the stress of overwhelming odds. Instead, human defenders seemed to thrive on adversity, their morale improving as the fighting intensified. They're actually enjoying this, Commander Vex reported in disbelief. Human combat communications indicate excitement rather than fear. They refer to the engagement as target practice and payback time. Admiral KYXX realized too late that the Coalition had fundamentally misunderstood their enemy. The intelligence reports had been accurate, but incomplete. Human weapons were indeed primitive compared to Coalition technology. Human tactics did violate established military doctrine. Human soldiers were technically civilian volunteers rather than professional military. What the reports had failed to capture was that these amateur fighters had learned warfare against other humans, opponents who shared their creativity, adaptability, and refusal to surrender. Combat experience against human enemies had forged the defenders into something no alien military had ever encountered. As night fell over the Kepler sector, Coalition forces found themselves bogged down in urban combat they neither expected nor understood. Their technological superiority meant nothing when they couldn't locate enemies who struck from shadows and vanished like smoke. Their overwhelming numbers became a liability when human defenders turned Coalition forces against each other through misdirection and false intelligence. The first day's fighting had been supposed to end in human surrender. Instead, it concluded with Coalition commanders requesting reinforcements and admitting they had underestimated enemy capabilities. In his command bunker beneath New Geneva, General Hayes monitored the developing battle with satisfaction. The Coalition had expected to face a conventional military force following standard galactic doctrine. Instead, they faced human veterans who understood that survival meant adapting improvising, and overcoming through any means necessary. Phase 1 complete, he reported to his staff. Coalition forces are committed to ground operations and experiencing unexpected resistance. Their commanders are confused and requesting additional assets. Time to move to Phase 2. Colonel Liu studied the tactical displays showing coalition fleet positions. Sir, what exactly is Phase 2? General Hayes smiled grimly. We stop playing defense and show them how humans really fight wars. Tomorrow, we take the initiative. Dawn brought unexpected quiet to the battlefields around New Geneva. Coalition forces had spent the night establishing defensive perimeters, expecting human counterattacks that never materialized. The absence of enemy contact made alien commanders more nervous than constant fighting had. Admiral KYXX reviewed casualty reports from his flagship, his scaled hands trembling slightly as the numbers scrolled past. First day losses exceeded all projections. More troubling than the raw casualties was the pattern of engagement. Coalition forces reported enemy contact, then silence. When reinforcements arrived, they found evidence of fierce fighting, but no human bodies. Our soldiers describe human tactics as impossible, reported intelligence officer THYSS. Enemy forces appear to strike from positions our sensors confirm are empty. They coordinate attacks across multiple fronts simultaneously despite possessing no detectable communication networks. Most disturbing, they seem to anticipate our movements before we make them. The Admiral studied tactical displays showing current force deployments. His ground troops held their landing zones, but advancing beyond them had proven costly and ineffective. Every attempt to push deeper into human territory resulted in ambushes, booby traps, and swift enemy withdrawals that left his forces bloodied and confused. What about orbital bombardment? We can eliminate their defensive positions from space. Human forces have withdrawn into urban areas where civilian populations remain. Galactic law prohibits indiscriminate bombardment of non-combatants. KYXX snarled in frustration. The humans were using their own civilians as shields, forcing the coalition to fight on terms favorable to the defenders. Every tactical advantage the aliens possessed was being neutralized through human cunning and legal technicalities. On the planet's surface, Lieutenant Sarah Kim crouched in the ruins of a shopping complex, her squad preparing for their next mission. The Korean-American veteran had served 3 tours in the border wars, where human forces learned brutal lessons about survival against superior enemies. The coalition was about to receive the same education. Target acquisition complete. She whispered in her throat mic, coalition supply, convoy approaching checkpoint Delta. 12 vehicles, approximately 200 personnel, minimal air support. Her team consisted of 8 soldiers armed with weapons that coalition intelligence continued to underestimate. Their rifles fired kinetic projectiles at hypersonic velocities, guided by targeting systems that human engineers had perfected through necessity rather than theory. Each soldier carried enough explosives to level a city block, disguised as routine equipment. The coalition convoy rolled through the checkpoint with confidence born of technological superiority. Their vehicles were armored against energy weapons and equipped with sensors that should have detected any ambush. Unfortunately for the aliens, human veterans had learned to fight enemies who possessed similar advantages. Lieutenant Kim's trap was elegantly simple. Rather than attacking the convoy directly, her team had prepared the road itself. Shaped charges buried beneath the asphalt would channel explosive force upward through weak points in alien armor. The timing had to be perfect. Too early, and the convoy would escape. Too late, and they might survive. Execute, she whispered. The first explosion vaporized the lead vehicle, sending debris spinning through the air like deadly confetti. Secondary blasts caught the convoy's middle section, creating a chain reaction that disabled half the column before coalition forces could react. In the confusion that followed, human soldiers struck from concealed positions with weapons designed to exploit the specific vulnerabilities in alien equipment. The engagement lasted 4 minutes. When coalition reinforcements arrived, they found burned-out vehicles and no trace of human attackers. The defenders had vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving behind only questions and casualties. Similar attacks erupted across the combat zone. Human forces struck supply lines, communication nodes, and isolated patrol units with devastating effectiveness. Each engagement followed the same pattern. Swift assault, maximum damage, immediate withdrawal. Coalition forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to stand and die like civilized opponents. Commander Vex of the Mantid Collective studied after-action reports in his command post, his compound eyes reflecting the chaos of human tactical doctrine. His species had conquered dozen worlds through superior technology and overwhelming force. The humans were teaching him that such advantages meant nothing against enemies who refused to fight conventionally. "How many casualties today?" he asked his aide. "Preliminary counts indicate 800 killed or wounded. Enemy losses remain unknown. They continue retrieving their dead and wounded before we can assess effectiveness." 800 casualties from forces that were supposed to be helpless farmers and miners. Vex was beginning to understand why human expansion had been so successful. These weren't civilians playing at war. They were predators who had evolved combat skills through constant conflict with their own species. The realization that humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years while most galactic civilizations pursued peaceful expansion was particularly disturbing. Every human veteran in the Kepler sector had learned warfare against opponents who shared their intelligence, adaptability, and complete lack of mercy for enemies. In the Armstrong Station asteroid belt, Captain Elena Vasquez prepared her forces for the next phase of General Hayes' strategy. The mining facility doubled as a military base, its industrial equipment modified for combat purposes. Coalition intelligence had dismissed the station as an easy target due to its apparent lack of defensive weapons. They were about to learn that human creativity extended far beyond conventional military thinking. Mining charges armed and positioned, reported her explosives specialist, Sergeant Chun. Industrial lasers recalibrated for tactical applications, or processing equipment converted to projectile weapons, ready to demonstrate human engineering. Captain Vasquez nodded grimly. The Coalition expected to face military hardware designed for combat. Instead, they would encounter industrial equipment repurposed by human ingenuity. Mining charges powerful enough to shatter asteroids could easily destroy alien starships. Or processing systems designed to handle massive loads could launch projectiles at velocities that would surprise Coalition forces. Coalition assault forces approached Armstrong Station with confidence, their sensors detecting no weapon signatures that matched known military configurations. The defenders appeared to possess only mining equipment and industrial machinery, hardly threats to modern warships equipped with energy shields and antimatter weapons. The first indication of trouble came when the station's mining platforms began launching what appeared to be processed or toward the approaching fleet. Coalition commanders initially dismissed the barrage as desperation, assuming the humans were throwing rocks at sophisticated military vessels. They realized their error when the first rocks impacted their lead destroyer. Each projectile was actually a precision-guided mining charge programmed to detonate inside enemy hulls. The destroyer's shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, not solid matter traveling at significant fractions of light speed. The warship disintegrated in a cascade of secondary explosions, its antimatter containment system breached by human ingenuity rather than advanced technology. The remaining assault force found themselves under bombardment from weapons that shouldn't have existed, deployed by enemies who refused to follow established military doctrine. "How is this possible?" demanded the task force commander as another ship died under the barrage. "They're using mining equipment as artillery." Captain Vasquez watched the alien fleet's confusion with satisfaction. Human engineers had spent decades developing equipment capable of functioning in hostile environments against dangerous opponents. Converting such machinery for military applications required creativity rather than advanced technology. More troubling for Coalition forces was the revelation that human industrial capacity far exceeded their estimates. Every mining facility, processing plant, and manufacturing center could potentially be converted into a weapons platform. The humans weren't just defending colonies. They were turning their entire civilization into a military asset. Meanwhile, aboard the Dominion's Wrath, Admiral KYXX reviewed intelligence reports with growing alarm. His forces held their landing zones, but had made no meaningful progress toward their objectives. Worse, human resistance was intensifying rather than weakening despite overwhelming odds. "Sir, we're receiving reports of unusual activity throughout the human sectors," Intelligence Officer THYSS announced. "Multiple civilian vessels have departed Earth, and other core worlds. Their destinations appear to be border systems where human colonies face external threats. KYXX felt cold dread settling in his stomach. Are they evacuating? Negative. Passenger manifests indicate military personnel. The humans appear to be mobilizing reserve forces and veteran units from across their territory. The implications were staggering. Coalition intelligence had focused on forces already present in the Kepler sector, assuming the human military capabilities were limited to local defenders. If Earth was deploying additional troops, the entire strategic situation would shift. How many ships are we talking about? Current count exceeds 3,000 vessels of various sizes. Estimated personnel transport capacity approaches 2 million individuals. 2 million additional human soldiers. Veterans of conflicts across human space, equipped with weapons designed by beings who understood human tactics. The coalition had prepared to crush 50,000 defenders, not fight an entire species mobilized for total war. On New Geneva's surface, General Hayes received updates on the developing situation across human space. The coalition's attack on the Kepler sector had triggered something the aliens hadn't expected: unified human response to external aggression. Reserve units from 12 sectors are reporting for duty, Colonel Liu announced. Veterans of the border wars, colonial defense forces, and merchant marine security personnel. Total deployment estimates exceed our most optimistic projections. The general nodded with satisfaction. The coalition had made a critical error in their intelligence assessment. They had viewed human military forces as localized colonial militias rather than components of a species-wide defense network. Every human who had ever faced combat was potentially a soldier, and humanity had been fighting internal conflict for centuries. What about equipment and supplies? Industrial mobilization exceeds all historical precedents. Every human world is converting civilian manufacturing to military production. Shipyards are working triple shifts to produce combat vessels. The entire species is transitioning to wartime economy. General Hayes studied tactical displays showing the broader strategic picture. Coalition forces in the Kepler sector were strong enough to overwhelm local defenders, but they would soon face reinforcements drawn from across human space. More importantly, they would discover that human military doctrine was fundamentally different from anything in their experience. Most galactic civilizations viewed warfare as a political tool, conducted according to established rules and limited objectives. Humans treated war as existential struggle where victory required the complete destruction of enemy capability to resist. The coalition was about to learn the difference between civilized conflict and human total war. Begin Phase 3. Hayes ordered. Time to show our guests what happens when humans stop playing defense. Across the Kepler sector, human forces began implementing tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Rather than holding defensive positions, they infiltrated coalition-controlled areas and began systematic destruction of enemy assets. Supply convoys disappeared without trace. Communication networks suffered mysterious failures. Vehicle pools exploded without warning. Most disturbing to coalition commanders was the humans' apparent willingness to sacrifice their own infrastructure to deny it to enemies. Factories, power plants, and transportation hubs were systematically destroyed rather than captured. The humans were implementing scorched earth tactics that turned their own territory into a death trap. They're destroying everything, Commander Vex reported to Admiral KYXX. Power grids, water treatment facilities, food distribution networks. The humans would rather see their colonies burn than let us control them. The Admiral realized too late that coalition strategy had been fundamentally flawed from the beginning. They had planned to conquer human territory and exploit its resources. Instead, they faced enemies who would destroy everything rather than surrender. Conquest was impossible against opponents willing to turn victory into pyrrhic disaster. As coalition forces struggled to maintain control over increasingly hostile territory, human reinforcements began arriving at the system's edge. The first wave consisted of fast attack craft crewed by veterans of dozens of conflicts. Unlike the defensive forces already engaged, these newcomers came equipped for offensive operations. Captain Maria Santos commanded a squadron of converted cargo vessels that coalition sensors couldn't properly classify. Her ships appeared to be civilian freighters, but appearances could be deceiving when dealing with human engineering. Each vessel carried enough firepower to engage major warships, hidden behind civilian facades that exploited galactic laws regarding non-combatant vessels. Primary targets identified, she announced to her squadron. Coalition supply ships maintaining position at Jump Point 7. Intelligence indicates minimal escort presence. Time to demonstrate why humans don't fight fair. Her vessels approached the Coalition fleet using civilian transponder codes and emergency distress signals. Galactic law required military forces to assist vessels in distress, regardless of their species or political affiliation. The Coalition commanders followed protocol, allowing the human ships to approach their formation. Too late, they realized their mistake. Captain Santos's squadron opened fire at point-blank range, their hidden weapon systems engaging before the aliens could react. Coalition supply ships, designed to support military operations rather than engage in combat, died under the surprise assault. In minutes, the alien fleet lost months of accumulated supplies and equipment. The human squadron vanished as quickly as it had appeared, jumping to hyperspace before Coalition warships could pursue. Behind them, burning supply vessels drifted in space, testimony to human tactical creativity and complete disregard for civilized military conduct. Admiral KYXX watches logistical network collapse as similar attacks erupted throughout the system. Human forces weren't just defending. They were actively hunting Coalition assets with single-minded determination. Every transport, every depot, every communication relay became a target for enemies who fought without honor or restraint. The Coalition was learning that humans didn't wage war according to galactic conventions. They fought to win, regardless of cost or consequence. Against such opponents, technological superiority and numerical advantage meant nothing without the will to match human brutality and creativity. The Coalition's confidence began cracking like ice under pressure as reports flooded in from across the Kepler sector. What should have been a swift demonstration of galactic superiority had transformed into a grinding nightmare of unexpected casualties and impossible human tactics. Admiral KYXX stood before the main tactical display aboard the Dominion's Wrath, watching red indicators multiply across the holographic battlespace. Each marker represented a Coalition asset destroyed, damaged, or missing. In 5 days of combat, his forces had lost more ships and personnel than in the previous decade of galactic peacekeeping operations. Status report, he demanded, his voice betraying strain that hadn't been present at the mission's beginning. Intelligence Officer THYSS manipulated the display, highlighting areas of human activity. Ground forces report continued harassment from enemy infiltrators. Supply convoys require increasing escort protection, reducing available combat assets. Most concerning, human reinforcements continue arriving despite our blockade positions. The Admiral studied the deployment patterns with growing unease. Human ships appeared at random locations throughout the system, struck without warning, then vanished before Coalition forces could respond. Their vessels seemed to ignore established jump point locations, materializing from impossible vectors that suggested technology beyond current galactic understanding. How are they bypassing our sensor networks? Unknown. Human ships appear to possess stealth capabilities that our equipment cannot detect. Alternatively, they may be using navigation technology that differs significantly from standard galactic systems. Neither possibility was reassuring. Coalition forces had prepared to fight an enemy using familiar technology and conventional tactics. Instead, they faced opponents who broke established rules through innovation, desperation, or capabilities their intelligence networks had completely missed. On the planet's surface, Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison led his reconnaissance team through the ruins of what had once been New Geneva's commercial district. The 30-year veteran of 3 wars had learned to read battlefields like topographic maps, and this one told a story of Coalition confusion and human adaptation. Enemy patrol patterns are becoming predictable, he reported through encrypted channels. They're following standard galactic military doctrine, establishing defensive perimeters and maintaining regular patrols. Time to educate them about human flexibility. Morrison's team moved through terrain that Coalition forces considered secure, using routes that alien sensors couldn't detect and timing that exploited gaps in enemy coverage. Their objective was a Coalition command post that enemy commanders believed was safely positioned behind established lines. The concept of safe positions was about to receive significant revision. Human engineers had spent centuries developing weapons and tactics for use against other humans, opponents who shared their intelligence, creativity, and capacity for violence. Coalition forces, accustomed to fighting species that followed established military conventions, were unprepared for enemies who viewed rules as suggestions to be ignored when convenient. Morrison's explosives specialist, Corporal Davis, studied the Coalition command post through advanced optics. The facility was protected by energy barriers and automated defense systems that could obliterate conventional assault forces. Unfortunately for the aliens, humans rarely attempted conventional solutions. Structural analysis complete, Davis whispered. Target building constructed according to standard galactic engineering principles. Foundation systems vulnerable to seismic disruption. Recommend subsurface approach. The human team began implementing tactics that no galactic civilization would consider civilized. Rather than attacking the facility directly, they undermined its foundation through precisely placed explosive charges. Coalition defense systems were designed to repel attacks from above, not prevent structural collapse from below. The command post imploded in spectacular fashion, its advanced technology rendered useless by human willingness to fight dirty. Enemy personnel inside died not from superior weapons, but from falling concrete and twisted metal. The psychological impact on coalition forces exceeded the tactical value. Humans were proving that alien technological advantages could be neutralized through creativity and ruthlessness. Similar attacks erupted across coalition-controlled territory. Human forces struck power plants, communication hubs, and supplied depots with weapons that alien engineers had never anticipated. Industrial equipment became artillery. Civilian vehicles became guided missiles. Common household chemicals became explosive compounds that bypassed alien sensors. Most disturbing to coalition commanders was the realization that every human civilian was potentially a combatant. Intelligence reports described farmers using agricultural equipment to destroy alien vehicles, miners employing excavation tools as weapons, and children providing reconnaissance data through apparently innocent communications. Commander Vex of the Mantic Collective reviewed casualty figures in his temporary headquarters, his compound eyes reflecting the grim mathematics of human warfare. His forces had suffered 1,000 casualties while human losses remained impossible to calculate. Enemy dead and wounded disappeared before coalition forces could assess their effectiveness. Request immediate reinforcements, he transmitted to Admiral KYXX. Human resistance exceeds all operational parameters. Current force levels insufficient to maintain control over designated objectives. The admission of failure burned like acid in his throat. The Mantic Collective had conquered 17 worlds using overwhelming force and technological superiority. Against humans, such advantages seemed meaningless. The enemy fought without honor, retreated without shame, and struck without warning. They were unlike any opponent in galactic military history. Aboard his flagship, Admiral KYXX faced the unthinkable reality that his forces were losing to an enemy that shouldn't have been able to mount meaningful resistance. Coalition strategy assumed that superior technology and numerical advantage would force human surrender within days. Instead, his forces were bogged down in urban combat against enemies who refused to fight fair. Sir, incoming transmission from Earth. Announced Communications Officer PRYLL. Human government requests immediate ceasefire negotiations. Relief flooded through KYXX's mind. Finally, the humans were coming to their senses. Faced with inevitable defeat, they were ready to discuss terms that would acknowledge coalition supremacy and establish proper boundaries for human expansion. Accept the transmission. Prepare to discuss surrender terms. The image that appeared on his command screen surprised him. Instead of a defeated human leader begging for mercy, he faced a stern woman in military uniform whose expression suggested anything but submission. Admiral Elizabeth Harper of the Terran Defense Force possessed the same unsettling confidence that characterized all human military personnel. Admiral KYXX, she began without preamble, I'm calling to inform you that Earth is declaring total war on the Coalition. All civilian protections are hereby suspended. All rules of engagement are canceled. Your forces have 72 hours to withdraw from human territory before we implement unrestricted warfare protocols. The alien admiral felt his heart's skip beats. You cannot be serious. Our forces outnumber yours 40-1. Our technology is centuries ahead of your primitive systems. Your entire species lacks the industrial capacity to threaten the coalition. Admiral Harper's smile was as cold as vacuum. Your intelligence assessment was based on our peacetime military posture. You're about to discover what humans are capable of when we stop pretending to be civilized. The transmission ended, leaving KYXX staring at a blank screen. Around him, bridge personnel exchanged nervous glances. The human military leader hadn't sounded defeated. She had sounded eager for the opportunity to escalate beyond current levels of violence. Sir, Intelligence Officer THYSS spoke hesitantly. We're detecting massive energy signatures from human space. Multiple fleets launching from Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies. Estimated strength exceeds 3 million vessels. 3 million ships. Even if most were civilian vessels pressed into military service. The sheer numbers suggested industrial capacity that coalition intelligence had completely underestimated. More troubling was the implication that human civilizations maintained the ability to transition from peace to total war with shocking speed. In the Kepler sector, General Hayes received confirmation of Earth's decision with grim satisfaction. The coalition had wanted to test human resolve through superior force. Now, they would discover what humanity was truly capable of when backed against the wall. Begin Phase 4, he ordered his staff. All restrictions on weapons and tactics are hereby lifted. Show the coalition what unrestricted human warfare looks like. Across the combat zone, human forces received new rules of engagement that would have horrified civilized galactic observers. Chemical weapons, biological agents, and radiological dispersal devices became standard arsenal components. Human engineers began implementing tactics that violated every galactic convention regarding civilized warfare. The first indication of changing human strategy came when coalition forces began experiencing equipment failures that defied explanation. Weapons systems suffered mysterious malfunctions. Life support systems failed without warning. Communication networks transmitted false information that led alien units into ambushes. Coalition technicians discovered that human infiltrators had introduced computer viruses specifically designed to exploit alien technology. The programs were elegantly simple, using basic mathematical principles to corrupt complex systems. Human programmers had spent decades developing electronic warfare techniques for use against other human opponents. How is this possible? Demanded Commander Vex as his forces struggled with increasingly unreliable equipment. Our computer security protocols are absolute. No primitive human system should be able to penetrate our networks. His technical staff provided answers that chilled alien commanders throughout the sector. Human programmers didn't attempt to break alien security. They simply exploited the mathematical foundations that all computer systems require to function. By introducing subtle errors into basic calculations, they could make any system unreliable over time. The technique had been developed during human civil wars, where opposing sides used similar technology and required creative methods to gain advantages. Against alien systems that relied on mathematical principles identical to human computers, such attacks were devastatingly effective. Worse than equipment failures was the escalation in human tactical brutality. Coalition forces began encountering weapons that caused indiscriminate area damage. Chemical agents that dissolved alien armor. Biological compounds that specifically targeted non-human physiology. Radiological devices that rendered entire areas uninhabitable. They're using weapons of mass destruction, reported Ground Commander Zek in horror. Human forces have deployed chemical and biological agents against our positions. Casualties are mounting beyond all acceptable levels. Admiral KYXX studied reports of human weapons that violated every galactic convention regarding civilized warfare. Most disturbing was the realization that such devices had been developed for use against other humans. If humanity was willing to employ such weapons against their own species, they would show no restraint when facing alien enemies. Request evacuation support for affected units, he ordered. Implement full biological containment protocols. All personnel to maintain sealed environmental systems until further notice. The admission that coalition forces required protection from human weapons marked a turning point in the conflict. Superior alien technology meant nothing against enemies willing to employ any weapon that proved effective. Human morality, shaped by thousands of years of warfare against their own species, permitted tactics that galactic civilization considered abhorrent. Captain Elena Vasquez watched Coalition evacuation procedures from her command post in Armstrong Station, noting with professional interest how alien forces struggled to adapt to human escalation. The enemy possessed advanced medical technology and sophisticated protective equipment, but they lacked experience fighting opponents who used unrestricted warfare. Target priority update, she announced to her staff. Coalition forces are withdrawing from contaminated areas and concentrating in defensive positions. Time to demonstrate why humans don't believe in safe zones. Her engineers had developed weapons that specifically exploited alien psychology and physiology. Sound weapons that disrupted Coalition species' sensory systems. Light patterns that caused neurological confusion in compound-eyed opponents. Atmospheric compositions that made alien life support systems ineffective. Most importantly, human forces had begun using captured Coalition technology against its creators. Alien weapons designed to fight civilized opponents proved surprisingly effective when employed by humans who understood how to maximize their destructive potential. The psychological impact on Coalition forces was becoming more significant than the tactical damage. Alien soldiers had been trained to fight according to established military doctrine, following rules that limited conflict escalation and protected civilian populations. Against humans who ignored such restrictions, traditional military training became a liability. Sir, reported communications officer PRYLL to Admiral KYXX. We're receiving surrender requests from multiple Coalition units. Morale among ground forces has deteriorated significantly. Many commanders report that their troops are refusing to engage human forces. The irony was devastating. Coalition forces possessed overwhelming technological and numerical advantages, but they lacked the psychological conditioning to fight enemies who employed unlimited violence without moral constraints. Soldiers trained for civilized warfare couldn't adapt to opponents who fought like predators defending their territory. Admiral KYXX faced a decision that no galactic military leader had confronted in centuries. His forces were technically winning by every traditional measure. They controlled more territory, possessed superior equipment, and maintained numerical supremacy. Yet they were losing the war because humans refused to fight according to established rules. Prepare withdrawal protocols, he finally ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. All units to maintain defensive positions while evacuation procedures are implemented. We're pulling back to safe distance and reassessing strategic objectives. The admission of failure to an enemy that should have been helpless burned through the Admiral's pride like acid. The Coalition had come to demonstrate galactic superiority over upstart humans. Instead, they were retreating from opponents who fought with creativity, brutality, and complete disregard for civilized military conventions. As Coalition forces began withdrawing from contested areas, human reinforcements continued arriving from across human space. Veterans of dozens of conflicts brought weapons and tactics refined through centuries of warfare against opponents who shared their intelligence and adaptability. The Coalition was about to discover that defeating such an enemy required more than technological superiority and numerical advantage. It required matching human willingness to employ unlimited violence in pursuit of victory, something that civilized galactic species had never been forced to learn. The arrival of human reinforcements transformed the nature of conflict in the Kepler sector from defensive resistance to aggressive retaliation. Admiral Elizabeth Harper commanded the largest fleet in human history. Over 3 million vessels ranging from converted cargo ships to purpose-built warships designed according to hard-won lessons from centuries of human-against-human warfare. Unlike Coalition forces that relied primarily on technological superiority, human fleets employed overwhelming numbers backed by tactical doctrine that assumed intelligent, adaptive opponents. Every ship carried weapons designed to defeat enemies who possessed similar technology, similar intelligence, and similar dedication to victory at any cost. Admiral KYXX watched the human fleet deployment with growing dread. His sensors detected energy signatures that didn't match known human technology, vessel configurations that defied established design principles, and coordination patterns that suggested communication methods beyond current galactic understanding. Fleet analysis complete, reported intelligence officer THYSS, her voice betraying uncertainty that hadn't been present during the mission's early stages. Human vessels appear to incorporate captured coalition technology modified according to unfamiliar engineering principles. Estimated combat effectiveness exceeds previous assessments by significant margins. The implications were staggering. Coalition intelligence had assumed that human technology lagged centuries behind galactic standards. Instead, human engineers have been reverse engineering captured alien equipment and improving upon it through methods that galactic civilization had never developed. How is technological advancement possible in such short time frames? Unknown. Human industrial capacity appears far greater than estimated. Additionally, their engineering methodology differs fundamentally from established galactic practices. They appear willing to accept significant risks in pursuit of improved performance. Admiral KYXX studied detailed scans of human ship modifications with professional alarm. Alien technology had been redesigned according to principles that prioritize combat effectiveness over safety margins. Humans had removed protective systems, overcharged power plants, and eliminated redundancies that galactic engineers considered essential. The result was vessels that could outperform their original specifications at the cost of reduced operational lifespans and increased catastrophic failure probability. No civilized species would accept such trade-offs, but humans apparently viewed equipment as expendable if tactical advantages could be gained. Commander Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Force led the first assault wave against coalition positions at the system's edge. Her squadron consisted of converted merchant vessels that coalition sensors couldn't properly classify, ships that appeared civilian but carried enough firepower to engage major warships. Target acquisition complete, she announced to her squadron. Coalition fleet maintaining standard defensive formation at Jump Point 5. Estimated strength 200 vessels, mostly cruiser class. Time to demonstrate human tactical innovation. Her forces approached using transponder codes that identified them as medical relief vessels protected under galactic law. Coalition protocols required military forces to allow humanitarian aid through combat zones, regardless of the ship's species or political affiliation. Admiral KYXX faced an impossible decision. Galactic law prohibited attacks on medical vessels, but human forces had repeatedly demonstrated willingness to exploit such protections for military advantage. Allowing the ships to approach risked devastating surprise attacks. Firing on apparent medical vessels would violate every principle of civilized warfare. Sir, incoming transmission from lead human vessel. Reported communications, Officer PRYLL. They're requesting permission to approach our formation to evacuate coalition wounded. The audacity was breathtaking. Human forces were offering to provide medical aid to enemies they've been fighting for over a week. Either they were genuinely concerned about alien casualties, or they were implementing psychological warfare of unprecedented sophistication. Maintain defensive positions, KYXX ordered reluctantly. Allow them to approach under humanitarian protocols. All weapons systems to remain powered but not targeted. Commander Chen's squadron closed to point-blank range before revealing their true nature. Hidden weapon ports opened across supposedly civilian hulls, exposing armaments that coalition intelligence had never detected. The human ships weren't medical vessels. They were purpose-built warships disguised as humanitarian aid craft. The engagement lasted less than 10 minutes. Coalition forces, caught completely off guard, lost 30% of their strength before they could mount effective resistance. Human vessels struck with precision that suggested detailed knowledge of alien ship vulnerabilities, then withdrew before coalition counterattack could develop. Impossible, Admiral KYXX whispered as casualty reports streamed across his displays. How do they know our defensive weaknesses? Intelligence Officer THYSS provided answers that chilled every alien commander in the system. Analysis suggests human forces possess detailed technical specifications for all coalition vessel classes. Their targeting patterns indicate comprehensive understanding of our armor configurations, shield geometries, and structural weak points. The coalition had been betrayed by their own technology. Human forces had captured enough alien equipment to reverse engineer complete technical databases. Worse, they had used such information to develop weapons specifically designed to exploit coalition defensive systems. On the planet's surface, General Hayes received reports of human fleet victories with grim satisfaction. The coalition had expected to face primitive human technology and conventional tactics. Instead, they encountered weapons and strategies refined through centuries of warfare against opponents who shared human intelligence and adaptability. Phase 5 authorization confirmed, he announced to his staff. Human reinforcements have established orbital superiority. Time to implement the final solution to our coalition problem. Colonel Liu studied tactical displays showing the developing strategic situation. Human forces now controlled space around the Kepler sector, but coalition ground troops still occupied significant territory on multiple worlds. Traditional military doctrine suggested besieging enemy positions until they surrendered or starved. Humans had never been particularly interested in traditional approaches. Sir, what exactly is Phase 5? General Hayes activated classified files that revealed the full scope of human military planning. Total extermination of coalition forces in the sector. No prisoners, no surrender negotiations, no recognition of enemy combatant rights. We're going to demonstrate why humans don't fight limited wars. The revelation shocked even veteran officers who had participated in the border wars. Human military doctrine typically recognized enemy surrender and maintained some protections for prisoners of war. Phase 5 eliminated such restraints in favor of complete enemy annihilation. Sir, is such escalation necessary? Coalition forces are already withdrawing. Necessary? The general's weathered features showed no emotion. The coalition came here to exterminate human colonies. They brought overwhelming force to crush what they considered primitive resistance. Now, they're going to learn what happens when humans decide to fight without restraint. Across the Kepler sector, human forces began implementing tactics that horrified even their own allies. Chemical weapons that rendered entire regions uninhabitable. Biological agents that specifically targeted coalition physiology. Nuclear devices that eliminated enemy strongpoints regardless of collateral damage to human infrastructure. Most disturbing was the systematic hunting of coalition personnel attempting to surrender. Human forces had received orders to accept no enemy surrender and take no prisoners. Coalition troops who attempted to lay down arms were eliminated as efficiently as those who continued fighting. The psychological impact on alien forces was devastating. Coalition military doctrine assumed that defeated enemies would be allowed to surrender according to established galactic conventions. The discovery that humans offered no quarter transformed organized withdrawal into panicked rout. They're not accepting surrender, Commander Vex transmitted desperately to Admiral KYXX. Human forces are systematically eliminating all coalition personnel regardless of combat status. Request immediate evacuation support for all ground units. The Admiral struggled to comprehend reports of human tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Galactic military doctrine assumed that intelligent species would maintain some moral constraints even during violent conflict. Humans apparently possessed no such limitations when fighting for their species' survival. Begin emergency evacuation procedures, he ordered. All available ships to extract ground personnel immediately. Priority to command staff and technical specialists. The evacuation attempt revealed the full extent of human tactical preparation. Coalition forces had expected to conduct orderly withdrawal under minimal enemy harassment. Instead, they faced systematic interdiction of all evacuation attempts by human forces equipped with detailed knowledge of alien procedures. Captain Elena Vasquez coordinated the human interdiction effort from Armstrong Station, her forces tracking coalition evacuation ships with sensors that alien stealth systems couldn't defeat. Human technology had been specifically developed to fight enemies who possessed similar capabilities, making alien countermeasures ineffective. Target priority confirmed, she announced to her squadron. Coalition evacuation craft launching from surface positions. Estimated capacity, 30,000 personnel per wave. Recommend maximum intercept effort. Her ships struck coalition evacuation fleets with weapons designed to cause maximum casualties rather than capture territory. Human forces weren't interested in preserving alien equipment or infrastructure. They wanted complete elimination of enemy capability to threaten human colonies. The engagement patterns that emerged violated every principle of civilized warfare. Human forces targeted medical ships, supply vessels, and damaged craft attempting to reach safety. They showed no distinction between combat personnel and support staff, treating all coalition forces as legitimate targets for complete destruction. Admiral KYXX watched his evacuation efforts collapse under sustained human attack. Ships that reached orbit found themselves facing human fleets that outnumbered coalition forces by overwhelming margins. Vessels that attempted to jump to hyperspace discovered that human forces had somehow disrupted standard navigation beacons throughout the system. "Sir, we've lost contact with Evacuation Fleet 7, reported Communications Officer PRYLL. Last transmission indicated human interception at jump point 12. Estimated casualties total 15,000 personnel. 15,000 coalition soldiers and support staff eliminated by enemies who refused to recognize surrender or accept prisoner exchanges. The numbers represented more than tactical losses. They marked the complete breakdown of civilized military conduct. How many personnel remain on surface? Current estimates indicate approximately 400,000 coalition forces trapped in various locations across the sector. Human interdiction prevents evacuation operations. Ground commanders report ammunition and supply shortages due to disrupted logistics. 400,000 alien soldiers cut off from their fleets and facing human forces that showed no mercy to enemies. Admiral KYXX realized that his invasion force faced complete annihilation unless he could find some method of negotiating human restraint. On the surface of New Geneva, Staff Sergeant Morrison led his team through coalition positions that had been abandoned so hastily that alien forces left behind functioning equipment and complete intelligence databases. The enemy retreat had become a complete rout as word spread that humans were offering no quarter to surrendering forces. Coalition command post secured, he reported through encrypted channels. Intelligence Hall includes complete tactical databases, communication codes, and strategic planning documents. Recommend immediate analysis to support ongoing operations. The capture information revealed the full scope of coalition planning for human extermination. Alien forces had prepared systematic destruction of human colonies, enslavement of survivors, and redistribution of human territory among coalition species. The documents provided justification for human escalation beyond normal moral constraints. Most disturbing was evidence that the coalition had planned similar operations against other independent species throughout galactic space. Humans weren't the only civilization facing elimination. They were simply the first to resist effectively. General Hayes reviewed coalition planning documents with professional interest. The enemy had prepared contingencies for human surrender, collaboration, and conventional resistance. They had made no preparation for total war conducted by opponents who possessed no moral constraints regarding enemy, civilians, or prisoners. Distribute this intelligence to all human command authorities, he ordered. Every human citizen should understand what the coalition planned for our species. Then they'll understand why we're not accepting alien surrender. The intelligence revelation transformed human public opinion from defensive resistance to aggressive retaliation. Citizens who had initially supported limited military response now demanded complete elimination of coalition forces. The knowledge that aliens had planned human extermination removed any moral qualms about reciprocal treatment. Across human space, industrial facilities shifted into maximum war production. Shipyards worked around the clock to produce vessels designed specifically for fighting coalition forces. Weapon factories mass-produced ammunition types that exploited alien vulnerabilities. Research centers developed biological and chemical agents targeted at non-human physiology. Most significantly, human military recruiting expanded beyond professional soldiers to include anyone willing to fight coalition forces. Civilian volunteers received training and tactics specifically designed for fighting technologically superior opponents. Veterans of human conflicts taught new recruits how to exploit alien psychological and physiological weaknesses. Admiral Harper reviewed strategic planning for the next phase of human operations. Coalition forces in the Kepler sector would be completely eliminated within days, but larger questions remained about galactic response to human military capabilities. Intelligence estimates suggest coalition member species are reconsidering their alliance, she reported to Earth Command. Several governments have transmitted unofficial ceasefire proposals through neutral intermediaries. The coalition was learning that humans fought wars differently than civilized galactic species. Where most conflicts ended with negotiated settlements that preserved enemy capability for future threats, humans preferred complete destruction of opposition forces. The mathematical certainty of human victory was forcing alien governments to reconsider their strategic positions. Admiral KYXX faced the final collapse of his invasion force as human fleets tightened their grip around remaining coalition positions. His forces had been reduced to isolated pockets of resistance that could neither escape nor receive reinforcement. The mighty coalition fleet that had entered the system with overwhelming confidence now existed only as scattered survivors hiding from human hunter-killer squadrons. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet commander," reported Communications Officer PRYLL. "Admiral Harper is requesting your personal surrender." The irony burned through KYXX's consciousness like acid. He was being offered the same opportunity for surrender that his forces had denied to human colonies. The knowledge that humans possessed no tradition of accepting enemy surrender made the offer particularly insulting. "Inform Admiral Harper that coalition forces will continue fighting until our objectives are achieved," he replied formally. "Sir," Pierrewell's voice carried desperation that military discipline couldn't conceal. "Our objectives are no longer achievable." "Perhaps negotiation—" "No," KYXX interrupted. "We came here to demonstrate galactic superiority over human expansion. Retreat now would signal that any species can resist coalition authority through sufficient violence. The precedent would destroy our ability to maintain galactic order." The Admiral's pride was about to cost the coalition everything they had invested in the Kepler sector operation. His refusal to acknowledge defeat would provide humans with justification for eliminating every coalition force in the system. Admiral Harper received notification of coalition refusal to surrender with satisfaction rather than regret. Human forces had prepared for complete enemy annihilation from the operation's beginning. Alien stubbornness simply removed any political complications that prisoner management might have created. "Implement final solution protocols," she transmitted to all human forces. "No coalition personnel are to survive. Elimination operations will continue until alien presence in the sector has been completely removed." The order marked the end of civilized warfare in the Kepler sector and the beginning of human demonstration that some enemies deserved no mercy. The final phase of human operations in the Kepler sector began with systematic elimination of coalition strongholds that had withstood weeks of siege. Human forces deployed weapons that demonstrated the full scope of technological advancement achieved through reverse engineering captured alien equipment and improving upon it through methods that galactic civilization had never imagined. Captain Maria Santos led the assault on the last major coalition position on New Geneva, a fortified complex that housed nearly 50,000 alien soldiers and support personnel. The facility represented the enemy's final organized resistance in the sector, protected by energy barriers and automated defense systems that should have made direct assault impossible. Human tactics had evolved beyond direct confrontation. "Geological survey complete," reported her engineering specialist, Lieutenant Torres. "Target facility constructed over limestone cavern system extending 40 kilometers underground. Recommend subsurface approach using industrial mining equipment modified for tactical applications." The human assault team began implementing strategies that no galactic military academy had ever taught. Rather than attacking alien fortifications directly, they undermined the geological formations supporting enemy positions. Coalition defense systems were designed to repel orbital bombardment and ground assault, not prevent carefully orchestrated tectonic collapse. Massive drilling equipment, originally designed for asteroid mining operations, bored through solid rock to reach the cavern system beneath the alien stronghold. Human explosives specialists then positioned nuclear devices at structural weak points calculated to cause maximum seismic disruption across the entire complex. The detonation sequence lasted 30 seconds. When it ended, the coalition's final stronghold had vanished into a crater 3 kilometers deep. 50,000 alien soldiers died, not from superior weapons, but from human willingness to destroy everything rather than accept continued enemy presence. "Target eliminated," Captain Santos reported with professional satisfaction. "Coalition ground resistance in this sector has been completely neutralized." Similar operations proceeded across the Kepler sector as human forces implemented final solution protocols with mechanical efficiency. No coalition position was too small to ignore, no alien survivor too insignificant to spare. Human commanders had received clear orders: complete elimination of enemy presence regardless of cost or collateral damage. Admiral KYXX watched his invasion forces complete annihilation from the bridge of his flagship, now the last coalition vessel operational in the system. Human fleets had systematically destroyed every ship, installation, and personnel concentration that his forces had established during their brief occupation. Final casualty assessment complete. Intelligence Officer THYSS reported, her voice hollow with shock. Total coalition losses exceed 2 million personnel. Human forces have eliminated 97% of our operational strength in this sector. 2 million soldiers and support staff, representing the largest military force the coalition had ever assembled, reduced to scattered debris by enemies who fought with creativity, brutality, and complete disregard for civilized military conventions. The mathematical impossibility of such losses defied every strategic calculation that galactic civilization had developed. How many human casualties? Estimated at fewer than 100,000 across all combat zones. The Admiral felt his heart stop beating for several seconds. 20-to-1 casualty ratios in favor of forces that possessed inferior technology, and smaller numbers represented military failure on a scale that galactic history had never recorded. Worse, human losses appeared to be primarily from accidents and equipment malfunctions rather than direct enemy action. Sir, Communications Officer PRYLL announced hesitantly. Incoming transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Harper requests your personal surrender under terms that guarantee your safety and return to Coalition space. The offer represented humanity's first acknowledgement that any Coalition personnel might survive the Kepler sector operation. Admiral KYXX realized that his personal surrender would serve human propaganda purposes by demonstrating that their forces could show mercy when strategic advantage warranted such gestures. Accept the transmission. Admiral Harper appeared on his command screen with the same unsettling confidence that characterized all human military personnel. Behind her, tactical displays showed the complete destruction of coalition forces throughout the system. Admiral KYXX, she began without preamble. Your invasion force has been completely eliminated. You command the only surviving coalition vessel in this sector. I'm prepared to offer terms that will allow you and your crew to return home alive. The alien admiral struggled to maintain dignity while acknowledging the totality of his defeat. What terms? Complete intelligence cooperation regarding coalition military capabilities, strategic planning, and political structure. In exchange, you and your surviving personnel will be returned to coalition space unharmed. The proposal represented psychological warfare of sophisticated brutality. Human forces were offering to spare his life in exchange for information that would enable them to wage more effective war against his own civilization. The intelligence value of such cooperation would far exceed the tactical benefit of executing remaining coalition personnel. I cannot provide information that would compromise coalition security. Admiral Harper's smile was as cold as interstellar space. Admiral, your entire invasion force is dead or dying. Your government invested enormous resources in this operation and achieved nothing except demonstrating human military capabilities to the galaxy. Cooperation with our intelligence services is your only remaining contribution to coalition interests. The logic was inescapable. Coalition governments needed detailed information about human capabilities to avoid future military disasters. Admiral KYXX's personal knowledge of human tactics, technology, and strategic thinking represented the only valuable intelligence that could be salvaged from the operation's complete failure. I accept your terms. The surrender of the Coalition's Supreme Commander marked the end of organized alien resistance in the Kepler sector. Human forces had achieved complete victory against overwhelming odds through tactics, technology, and strategic thinking that galactic civilization had never encountered. General Hayes reviewed after-action reports from his command bunker, noting with professional satisfaction that human casualties had remained within acceptable parameters despite facing enemies who possessed overwhelming technological and numerical advantages. The key to victory had been refusing to fight according to enemy expectations. Strategic assessment complete, Colonel Liu announced. Coalition forces eliminated with minimal human infrastructure damage. Mining operations can resume within 30 days. Colonial population casualties, less than 2% across all affected worlds. The numbers represented unprecedented success in military operations against technologically superior opponents. Human forces had not only survived alien invasion, but had eliminated the threat so completely that normal civilian activities could resume almost immediately. What about coalition response to their defeat? Intelligence intercepts suggest significant political upheaval among coalition member species. Several governments are questioning the alliance structure that produced such catastrophic military failure. The coalition was discovering that defeat by supposedly primitive humans carried political costs beyond simple military losses. Member species that had joined the alliance for protection against human expansion now faced enemies who had proven capable of destroying any force sent against them. Across human space, industrial facilities continued maximum war production despite the victory in the Kepler sector. Human leadership understood that eliminating one coalition invasion force would only invite larger attacks unless the aliens' capability for future aggression was permanently eliminated. Admiral Harper coordinated the next phase of human strategic planning from her flagship as intelligence analysts processed information obtained from captured coalition personnel and equipment. The aliens had revealed far more about their civilization's vulnerabilities than they realized during their brief occupation of human territory. Target assessment complete, reported her intelligence chief, Commander Park. Coalition member species maintain individual military forces with minimal coordination between different alien governments. Their technology relies on standardized systems that human computer viruses can exploit. Most importantly, their industrial capacity appears concentrated in a small number of heavily protected core worlds. The intelligence revelations provided strategic opportunities that human forces were uniquely positioned to exploit. Coalition civilization had developed along lines that prioritized technological sophistication over redundancy and security. Human forces, trained to fight opponents who shared their adaptability and paranoia, possessed exactly the capabilities needed to exploit such weaknesses. Prepare strategic offensive operations, Admiral Harper ordered. If the coalition wants to test human resolve, we'll demonstrate what happens when humans take the initiative. The decision to carry the war into coalition space represented escalation beyond anything galactic civilization had experienced in centuries. Most interstellar conflicts ended with negotiated settlements that preserved existing political structures while adjusting territorial boundaries. Humans apparently intended to eliminate the coalition's ability to threaten human expansion permanently. On Earth, President Shun addressed a joint session of the Global Assembly as reports from the Kepler sector confirmed the complete elimination of coalition forces. The victory had been achieved at costs far lower than any strategic analysis had predicted, but the implications for future human security remained uncertain. The coalition invasion of the Kepler sector was intended to demonstrate galactic superiority over human expansion, she announced to assembled representatives. Instead, it has demonstrated that human civilization possesses military capabilities that our enemies failed to anticipate. The address was broadcast throughout human space and beyond, ensuring that coalition governments would understand the strategic implications of their defeat. Humans were not helpless victims to be eliminated through superior technology and overwhelming numbers. They were predators who had learned warfare through centuries of conflict against opponents who shared their intelligence and adaptability. Our response to coalition aggression will be proportional to the threat they pose to human colonies. Since they intended complete extermination of human presence in the sector, we will eliminate their capability to threaten human expansion anywhere in galactic space. The announcement sent shock waves through coalition governments that had expected limited human retaliation followed by negotiated settlement. Instead, they faced opponents who treated warfare as existential struggle requiring complete victory over enemy resistance. Ambassador Xanth of the Crovar Empire reviewed casualty reports from the Kepler sector operation with growing horror. His species had participated in the coalition offensive expecting swift demonstration of galactic superiority over primitive human forces. Instead, they had witnessed the complete annihilation of the largest military force in galactic history. How do we respond to human demands for unconditional surrender? He asked his government's Strategic Planning Committee. The question revealed the fundamental problem facing coalition leadership. Human forces had demonstrated capabilities that made continued resistance extremely costly while offering no compromise solutions that would preserve coalition political structures. The aliens faced the choice between surrender and gradual extinction. Perhaps we can negotiate territorial boundaries that satisfy human expansion requirements while preserving coalition authority in core systems, suggested Defense Minister Core. Human communications indicate they are not interested in territorial compromise, Zenth replied. Their strategic objective appears to be elimination of any galactic authority that could threaten future human expansion. The coalition's own strategic planning had created the political framework that justified human escalation beyond normal warfare limitations. By attempting to exterminate human colonies, the aliens had provided moral justification for reciprocal treatment that galactic civilization had never experienced. Across coalition space, member governments struggled with military preparations that their industrial capacity couldn't support against enemies who possessed detailed knowledge of alien technology and tactics. Human forces had captured enough coalition equipment to reverse engineer complete technical databases while developing countermeasures specifically designed to exploit alien vulnerabilities. More troubling was the revelation that human civilization maintained industrial capacity far exceeding coalition estimates. Intelligence reports described manufacturing facilities that could transition from civilian to military production within days, producing weapons and equipment optimized for fighting specific alien opponents. The strategic implications were devastating. Coalition forces had been designed to fight civilized opponents who followed established military doctrine and possessed predictable technological capabilities. Against humans who ignored such constraints, alien military advantages became meaningless. Admiral Harper reviewed intelligence reports describing coalition political chaos as member species reconsidered their alliance obligations in light of human military capabilities. Several governments had already initiated secret negotiations through neutral intermediaries, seeking separate peace agreements that would preserve their independence. Coalition unity is fracturing under pressure of military defeat, she reported to Earth Command. Recommend immediate offensive operations to prevent enemy reorganization under more competent leadership. The human fleet prepared for operations that would carry warfare into the heart of coalition space. Unlike the defensive battle in the Kepler sector, this campaign would demonstrate human capabilities on scales that galactic civilization had never imagined. 3 months after coalition forces first entered the Kepler sector, the last alien survivors departed under human escort toward neutral space. Admiral KYXX and his remaining personnel carried with them intelligence about human military capabilities that would reshape galactic politics for generations. Behind them, human colonies resumed normal operations as if the greatest military invasion in galactic history had been merely a training exercise. Mining facilities repaired battle damage and expanded their operations. Colonial populations grew as new immigrants arrived from Earth and other human worlds. The Kepler sector began producing industrial output that exceeded pre-war levels. General Hayes stood in his rebuilt command center, watching construction teams repair the last infrastructure damage from coalition bombardment. The aliens had intended to demonstrate that human expansion could be halted through superior force. Instead, they had proven that humans possessed the will and capability to fight total war against any enemy that threatened their species' survival. "Sir," Colonel Liu announced, incoming transmission from Admiral Harper. "Human fleets have achieved their initial objectives in coalition space. Enemy resistance is collapsing across multiple sectors." The general nodded with satisfaction. The coalition had wanted to test human resolve through military force. Now, they were discovering what happened when humans decided to demonstrate their full capabilities against civilizations that had never learned to fight wars without moral constraints. The galaxy was about to receive an education in human warfare that would reshape interstellar politics permanently. Species that had joined the coalition to limit human expansion now faced enemies who possessed the technology, tactics, and determination to eliminate any threat to their civilization's future. In the end, the coalition's greatest mistake had been assuming that humans would fight like civilized opponents. Instead, They had unleashed predators who treated warfare as existential struggle and possessed no moral qualms about eliminating enemies who threatened their species' survival. The galaxy would never underestimate human military capabilities again.